r/askreddit. People who have stories they want to share, but have not found a question relevant to them. What are your stories? The story of how my mother reunited with her sister. My mother was born in the very far east of Russia. Her father was a survivor of the gulags and she was raised in a small settlement that was mainly populated by ex-prisoners and their families. Before my grandfather married, he had survived a mine collapse and while in recovery had an affair with a nurse that produced a child. After being released and settling down with my grandmother, he had reached out and established contact with his daughter. They met a few times and he even took my mother on a few occasions to meet her. She lived in a city 5,000 kilometers to the south. But eventually, once the government let them move, my mother's family moved across the country, and this being the times before cell phones and social media, they lost touch with my aunt. The last time my mother saw her, she was about 12 and my aunt was about 20. Fast forward about 17 years later, my mother is on the Moscow metro, taking my sister to music school. She sees a woman sitting across from her and as she describes it, just felt a gravitational pull towards her. She begins staring at her, trying to figure out why it feels like she knows this person. Suddenly, it clicks, and as the train pulls into my mother's stop, she gets up and grabs this woman and says, "Are you another Rusky pianist's aunt, daughter of his grandfather? Get off the train with me now." And lo and behold, her intuition was right. And that's how after about 17 years of no contact, my mother just happened to reunite with her long-lost sister on a crowded Moscow metro train. I was at the zoo one time when I was younger, camp trip, and I stopped by the gorilla enclosure. The gorillas, being gorillas, were ambling all over the place and hooting like crazy. But for some odd reason, when they saw my face, they were enchanted. I had 4 to 5 gorillas just staring at me, and lounging around. They didn't seem territorial or anything. I ended up playing a game of peekaboo with one of them, and unfortunately never got to see any of the other enclosures. It's a fond memory, that's for sure. Back in high school I worked as kennel help at a veterinarian office. One day we ran out of sink cleaner and some various products necessary for work. He sent me to Walmart to stock us up. I loaded about 10 or 15 cans of Comet and a few jugs of Clorox in the buggy and was headed over to get something on the other side of the store. As I rounded a corner I almost collided with another lady's buggy. She looked down and all but screamed, "Is there a sale on Comet? Oh my god," and took off running with her buggy towards the cleaning aisle. I tried very hard to catch her and tell her it was for work. But she was absolutely determined to grab the rest of the Comet. If you were accidentally scammed by a teenager into buying a fuck ton of Comet in 1984 or so, please know I tried to stop you. Wife was on her first Zoom meeting last March in the kitchen. I asked if I could be off-screen cooking breakfast quietly and she said yes, as long as I'm quiet and not distracting. I wound up burning what I was cooking, causing lots of smoke. Then when I was trying my best to get the situation under control, my robe that I was wearing laid on the burner, electric stove, and started smoking. So basically my wife told me to not be distracting, and I wound up lighting myself on fire. To her credit, she maintained poise and completely ignored my situation. We still laugh about it a year later. I once gave the singer Meatloaf 2 very awkward handshakes. This was obviously a few years back, when both conventions and handshakes were a thing. Meatloaf arrived at his booth, and the first thing he did was go down his line to personally shake hands with everyone there. Unexpectedly, Meatloaf was offering handshakes with his left hand, and me being a righty, when it came time for me to shake his hand my brain had a meltdown of what to do, so instead of also using my left hand to shake his hand, I extended both hands and awkwardly cupped his. I knew I messed up, so I didn't commit to the awkward hand cupping, so on top of it being awkward it was also loose, and if there's one thing that makes handshakes worse, it's when they're weirdly limp. He then went to his booth, began signing autographs, and eventually I made my way to the front. I got my autograph, and once again he offered his left hand to shake. This second handshake was slightly better than my first, in that this time I only extended one hand, my right, which I then noticed and went oh, and then finally successfully offered my left hand. He shook it, and I went on my merry way with my autograph and a new story to tell. Very nice man, was very friendly to his fans and never once brought up my inability to give a proper handshake to a left hand. I've shared this before, but my friend from grad school had previously been a skydiving instructor in Colorado, and had jumped more than 600 times. One of these times, he, for some reason, had his wallet in his suit, and it fell out. Fell to earth somewhere. He figured, this sucks, but oh well. Absolutely no chance of finding it. Separately, a man in rural Colorado was found murdered. Turns out in their remote cabin where he lived with his daughter, he had been sexually abusing her and she finally had enough and killed him. The police searched the house and all of his property, and found my friend's wallet in the trunk of his car. Police thought to themselves, fucking idiot murderer left his wallet in this dude's trunk, damn easiest arrest ever. Friend had the super believable alibi of couldn't have been me officer, actually that wallet fell out of my pants while I was skydiving. Edit to add, my friend was never arrested but he was questioned, and had to have his story corroborated. From what I remember of him telling me the aftermath, the cops knew early on that it was the daughter so she might have confessed, that's pure speculation though. The sexual abuse/self-defense detail didn't come out until later though. When the cops cleared my friend they told him the father had taken all of his cash. They have no idea why he kept the wallet. Subscribe.